So good morning, everybody. And that was beautiful, thank you. So it's a pleasure, a privilege to be here thank you for inviting me, for your 272nd anniversary. Sorry, I need to be closer. There you go. There we go, we'll make do. I like history, and this church is full of history. It's fabulous, a beautiful place. Just a little aside story. I moved here in 1999 in the fall, and we didn't have a church. So Christmas we came, I remember coming to your outdoor, I don't know if you still do it, outdoor Christmas service with live animals. But it was so cold that many of us ended up inside here to warm up. So that was my first time in St. Matthew's. I'm going to speak a little bit about COVID, caring, kindness, and service. But first of all, I want to thank St. Matthew's for demonstrating those well before COVID. You've been serving in many, many different ways, serving the Halifax community. My wife and my middle daughter, who up until COVID, she was homeschooled, and they used to come here and volunteer out of the cold in the basement. And that's just one example of how you have and continue to serve Halifax. So thank you for that. And I know this church, along with many others and many other faith communities, have done amazing things in the last 2 years. As hard as the last 2 years have been, many, many people have followed those words of caring, kindness, and service. So let me unpackage that a little bit. And I won't go on too long, because I can talk about this for a long time. So, I think we have to recognize that Nova Scotia, we have been relatively successful in dealing with the pandemic. And I say we're not finished yet, and I'll come back to that, but we've done a relatively good job, I think. And if you look at any of the epidemiologic indicators that cases, or more importantly, indicators of severe illness, hospitalizations, and death compared to the national average and compared to other provinces, we've had much lower rates of those than along with our counterparts in PEI and Newfoundland and Labrador. There's a few reasons for that. I have to start with, we have some demographic and geographic advantages, or we did, especially during the first couple of waves, that because we're sort of along the other Atlantic provinces, we're at the end of the country, if you will. Most diseases, most viruses, flu every year starts out west and comes east, and the COVID was the same. It started in the larger provinces. So we had the advantages of time of learning and watching a little bit and seeing what other provinces did or perhaps didn't do. But we also have a more rural population, which helped us. We also don't have very large, highly dense urban environments. Halifax is becoming that, but in a national and global scheme, we're still relatively small. And certainly in the first couple of waves, COVID was spreading mostly through in our large cities where you have very dense populations. So that helped us out. That's less so now. We're seeing more in the rural areas. But we also had we've had very good political leadership, and I credit Stephen McNeil for that. The first time I met with him, he said, "The health and safety of Nova Scotians will come first. Tell me how to do that." And that has set the yardstick, if you will, set the bar pretty high, and subsequent premiers have stuck to that. It's given me the opportunity to be able to, with my team, and talking to my colleagues across the country and looking at international evidence and literature, to say this is what we need to be focused on to protect as best we can the health and safety of Nova Scotians. And we haven't had pressures to do otherwise that have happened in other places. And I think that's allowed us then, starting with that principle and the political leadership, which essentially said, we're going to set a direction and then step back and let public health, let people who have expertise in this area guide us. So we've been able to set where we've had watched things, we've acted early when things look like they're picking up, we've acted strongly at the same time. And that has put us in good stead to minimize the impact. If you act strongly and quickly, that makes a huge difference. And then when things start to ease up, as all the waves do, we've taken a very slow, cautious approach that we won't loosen up until we're very comfortable that we can do that. And then when we start to loosen things up, we do that slowly. And because of that, especially through the first couple of waves, I think people have seen that the path we've chosen actually works. And it's allowed us, and not just works from a health perspective. I think I've spent a lot of time in the last 2 years talking to the business community about all the things we need to do, which had tremendous financial, economic impacts. But in the short term, yeah, those impacts are certainly were hard in the short term. But if you take a longer term view, I think what people, including the business community, started to see even after the first wave is that slow, that act quickly and then relax slowly and cautiously actually puts us in a better place economically, because once you open up, you can stay open. So we've been able to get this place where we haven't had as much division between public health on one side, the economy on the other side. People have understood that actually good public health, taking care of people and people's health, is good for the economy. So I think as we deal with climate change and housing and all those things, that to me is a very important message. If you look after people first, then actually our economic future is actually in the best possible place. So that, anyway, I won't go. That's a whole other discussion. But there are certainly things from COVID we can learn. And because then we've been able to this place where we haven't had this, public health versus the economy, there hasn't been all the pressure to do things early to not be as strong as we needed to be. And we've been able to have a very cohesive approach that the vast majority of Nova Scotians have supported, despite having some substantive impacts on them, on their business, their jobs, etc. And that has allowed us to do some of our, as I talked about, our measures. We've also been very creative and innovative in terms of how we've used our testing. We were the first and still leading the country in how we use testing of people who don't have symptoms, our rapid testing approach. That continues to be a key part of our strategy that we focus from the very beginning and still do, having appropriate measures at the border to try to slow the virus introduction into Nova Scotia. And our vaccine program, I'm very proud of that, and certainly I won't take credit because there's lots of people who did all the work on that. But even though we took time to build a program which is still standing the test of time, that we invested in infrastructure in terms of having our single point of access for an appointment. So no matter where you live in the province, we have one way to get an appointment through a phone line or online, a single booking system, and that allows us to be very flexible and nimble, allows people to have a very accurate and reliable place to make an appointment. It took us some time to build that, but to me it was a lesson of patience. Take time to build things, build the infrastructure, and we can apply this in other places. So I kept saying to people who were critical, Nova Scotia is so slow, Nova Scotia is so slow. And I said, this is a long journey. It's not where you are when you start the race, it's where you are when you finish the race. So there's something there to learn for lots of things. It's a patient approach built on evidence, building the necessary tools that you have to provide quality program and service. But I think fundamentally, the most important thing is about people. How have people responded? In a time of challenge, and make no mistake, this is has been a very challenging time. I know you're all aware of that, but we're going to have more pandemics. We just look around us from climate change. Look at what's happening in British Columbia. We have a weather event coming our way this week, which could have substantive impacts. So we're going to have more and more challenges to our communities that call us all to respond collectively. And I think there's something in our Nova Scotia culture that we have been able to kind of tap into, which is, and I attribute it to because our culture and our history is all about small communities based on, that had to be independent. There was no internet, there was no paved highways, there was nothing. So small communities for fishing, farming, logging, mining, and the only way people survived was by looking after each other. And I've deliberately tried to pull on that to say that how we get through COVID is by caring for each other. And I think Nova Scotians have, to a large extent, and this to me is the core of why we've been successful, have answered that call, have said we need to focus on the common good. So I may have to give up some things for myself for the better of the common good. We've focused on, even though things are challenging and nerves get frayed and people are in difficult circumstances, we need to be kind and caring for each other. And that ultimately the way we get through a challenging time like this is serving one another, service to our family, service to our community, service to our province and our country. So I purposely try to pull on those themes, and I do bring those, I don't speak to them directly, but in my work, but I bring those from my Christian perspective, that I've very much thought and talked with people and prayed about this and brought that forward. Because I fundamentally, my belief, and this is not unique to Christianity, but it is certainly our core tenets, that we are called first and foremost to love God. We're called to love each other. And thank you for the passage on Matthew, which perfectly demonstrates that. And that to me is how you didn't know what I was thinking about. I had no idea what passage you were going to read. So God was working in there to put that right there. That passage perfectly illustrates of what we are called to do, especially look after each other, to love each other, but especially those who are marginalized in some way. So that's what we're called to do as Christians. And we're also called, I firmly believe that we're called, our actions and how we walk that out are much more important than the words we use and how we talk about it. So it kind of sounds like caring, kindness, and service, doesn't it? So we're now in the last phase of the pandemic, the fourth wave, which seems to drag on and on and on. And if you heard me the last briefing, I said a couple of months ago, it looks like the fourth wave, we'll be able to get out of that late November, early December. It's not turning out that way. So COVID's resurging in Europe and in other places. The reality is, I think this is going to be a difficult winter, so we have to stick with it. We have to hang in there and do everything we're currently doing through the winter months. But I think this is more challenging now. I see people are very tired. People's reserves are gone. Where people are really feeling the impacts of the last 2 years, which makes it more difficult. There's other things going on. We see more and more talk about climate change and all those things. So it's hard to focus just on COVID, nor should we. But it does make people's. It's been a long journey. I think people are. For many of those reasons, it's harder for people to stick with, to do what we need to do personally and collectively to get through the winter as safely as possible. And there's this new divisiveness that it's been there, but it's really come to the fore, unfortunately, in the last few months. That there's growing, unfortunately, anger and even hatred. That's coming out of this, of some of the necessary things we have to put in place to keep each other safe. Fortunately, in Nova Scotia, it's a small minority, certainly what I see, but it is very, very vocal, very angry, and Some of it is very personal about people. And it's very me-focused, that people are saying this is all about me, what I need to do, or what I'm upset by what I'm not allowed to do. And there's a lot of discussion around my freedoms are being taken away. But what people are forgetting in there is, again, that sense of our call. We're meant to, along with freedoms come a responsibility, and that responsibility is to make sure that yes, we have freedoms, but how do those play out with everybody else's freedoms, and that call to work together for our common good that needs to be played out. And there's a very isolated view. Some of the groups that are pushing this are just seeing their own very narrow, isolated perspective, and forgetting how they're part of a much greater community, that all that needs to fit together and work together. So as we go through this fourth wave in the next few months, I see it as an opportunity for us as the Christian community, as well as other faith communities, that for us to continue to do what we're doing, but even perhaps place more focus on that. But maybe we also need to be more thoughtful about how people make sure people are seeing what we're doing. I know we're not meant to kind of, we're certainly not, our acts of charity and kindness and stuff, we're just meant to do them. But I think now is a time where people need to see that there's a minority with a view of things, but the majority is doing it a different way, and maybe the majority needs to be, the way most people are acting with COVID needs to be a bit more visible. So that is why I see it as the challenge for the next few months. How do we want to be seen, responding to COVID right here in Nova Scotia, right here in our families and our communities? I think if you look at the Bible in total, not like some groups are doing and pulling out specific passages, but if you look at the key message of what the Bible tells us in total, if you look at the example of Jesus and how he walked through on the earth, or through and on the earth, and how he responded to people. And if you just look at what we've been doing and what's been helping us for the last 2 months, the answer is, to me, is very clear. That we need to continue to focus on the call for caring, for kindness, for service. Ultimately, it's the call to love each other, even in difficult times, and to make sure that we are, and that is how we ultimately show our love to God. We show our love to God by our acts, as Matthew 25 said, by our acts to others of love and caring. That is what will get us through this last difficult phase of COVID. Thank you.
Now it's my turn. On behalf of St. Matthew's United Church, I want to thank you for your words here this morning. And it would be remiss of me not to also say, on behalf of Nova Scotia, thank you for leading us these many months through very difficult times. However, you're not going to escape here without some St. Matthew's swag. We have a whole bundle of St. Matthew's swag with something we felt you really needed, another tie.